Hi, I'm Danielle with Stitch and Designs. Welcome back to my channel. For today's bag tutorial, I have another Pimp My Bag series from K&A. We are doing the Mav Pack from Lynn's Handmade. It's at 120%. And Star Wars fans, be ready. It's Ahsoka! It's so cool. So I'm not the best and most familiar with everything that is Star Wars. I've seen the movies, enjoy the movies. I've seen a lot of the new spin-offs that are on the Disney Plus, enjoyed those. But like the Clone Wars, the animated series, like I haven't watched those, so there's a lot that I just don't know about Star Wars. But that aside, the new Ahsoka series, from what I've watched, is fantastic. And this bag, oh, it's fantastic. I love it. So we got, it says Ahsoka right there, and it's like, I am not a Jedi. I love this. And the back with the big rebel. Oh my gosh, I love it. It is so cool. So a couple things that I did on this. One, I do the binding method. I personally prefer that method, so I do these as a binding method. When you open them, instead of doing a zipper pocket and a slip pocket typically that I've been doing lately because I can't decide between the little design pockets that Alex designs. They're just too darn freaking cute. So on this one, I did 2 slip pockets instead. So I have a slip pocket on this side and then a slip pocket against the back. And then I also added a cute, what does it say? Made in a galaxy far, far away. I thought that was a cute little tab to add to that. That one is from More Me Know. And then we got our strap. So cute. So there's the webbing, the coordinating webbing, and then the little detail thing. So we got the rebel symbol and then I'm not a Jedi. So you can choose which way you want those to go. And then of course there is the coordinating zipper pull. That's super pretty. I know it's kind of hard to see from this distance, but once you start watching the video, you'll see it up close and personal. But this bag was so much fun to make. This, yes, it looks complicated, but it really actually goes on fairly easy. I do make the mistake of putting this on first prior to basting on my lining. So I do make a comment in there to, it'd be probably a little bit easier to do baste your lining on first, then add this. But the way that I did it, doing this first, yeah, made it a little bit tougher to put the lining on, but it's really not the end of the world if you do end up putting this first. And then at the end, I also thought that if you add maybe some Peltex in here, that might help with like the wanting to fall forward or something like that. But even if you don't, like there is no Peltex in this right now, and it looks fantastic. I think it looks great. Yes, it's not going to lay perfectly flat, but like if you get like a little bit of a bend and a little bit of crease there, these stand up and it looks fantastic. And I think once it relaxes, because from being bent inside the bag and everything for a while, it got a little crinkly. So give it some time and it'll look good. But I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial of the new Pimp My Bag from K&A Custom Fabrics and Hardware. Very cool. All right. And by the way, there's four bags from this round of the Pimp My Bag series. 3 of them are Lynn's Handmade, and there's one brand new cut and sew. I'm so excited to have this company on to do cut and sews with. Oh, I'm so excited. So look out for those tutorials that are going to come your way. So I hope you guys enjoy this Ahsoka tutorial. Bye. Okay, so when you get your Ahsoka panel set, it's going to come looking like this, all rolled up. All right. I'm like, I had scissors around here. Oh, there they are. They're hiding from me. Oh, this is so cool. Oh. So lots of pieces in this one. Well, maybe not lots and lots, but a couple extra things. All right, laying it all out. Okay, so we got our water-resistant canvas. Going to go over our pieces real quick. If you were going to be following the method per the instructions, that uses the birthing method instead of the binding method, that's where these pieces right here come in handy for the zipper pocket. You have our front, our back, doesn't really matter, our lining pieces of our main, our 2 pocket pieces. You can use both of these to do a zipper pocket if you want to. I'm going to be doing them as 2 slip pockets instead. So one will be on the front, one will be on the back. I'm just going to be cutting some additional pieces the exact same size as this in a cotton woven with a coordinating blue that I have on hand. So then I can do slip pockets instead. If you want to do a zipper pocket, I have previous Pimp My Bag series that are do the Mav Pack that you could follow that tutorial on how I do the zipper pocket if you want to do a zipper pocket. But I'm just going to do 2 slip pockets. We have our main gusset and then we have our zipper gusset. And this additional big piece, this is hair, the headdress. I don't know what this is. I don't know if it's her hair or exactly what it is. But either way, this is your front. So with the headband part, that's your front. This is your back. You'll cut these pieces out and then sew them together, and then we'll add them into the bag. These pieces are part of your strap, and they can go on the end of your webbing to kind of give it more of a finished look. These aren't necessary to use them. I've used them, and then I've done others that I haven't used them. You have your main gusset. I am not a Jedi. I love that. So cool. We have our D-ring strap, our zipper panel. This is part of our strap pieces. This is the piece that goes onto the back for our strap. And this is our anchor D-ring thing that we end up cutting in half. And technically you could do 1 on each side but we only have enough D-rings to do 2. So you would either do the 2 here and then get an edit, make a D-ring strap for right here, or if you did anyway, I won't go into too much and ramble on. And then you have your front and your back. So lots of really cool pieces that are in this. This looks so cool. I love it. Okay, I'm excited to make this one. All right, now to cut it all out. Oh, and additional things you'll need to cut out if you're doing the slip pockets like I am, you'll need to cut additional pieces for that. And if you're going to do them as a slip pocket and a zipper pocket, you still need to cut additional pieces. But if you're just going to do straight zipper pocket with the 2 pieces, then you don't need to cut anything extra. If you're doing binding, you will need to cut strips of binding. I personally cut mine probably like about 1.125 inches, maybe 1.25 inches. I just like to have that little bit of extra wiggle room just in case things move on me, and that way I'm ensuring I'm catching it. But if all you have is 1 inch wide, 1 inch works too. So you'll need to cut your binding, and then you'll also need to cut your interfacing for this. I will show you guys that part when we get to it. This is 120%. If you do not have the pattern printed out at 120%, I do have a little video in here. So if you exit out of this, or I'll link it down below in the description. So that way, if you guys don't know how to print it at 120%, I show you how to do that. And so now I actually have one of these. So I'm not having to do the little drawing thing quite so much anymore. So again, you can watch that tutorial on how to print it at 120% if you don't have it at 120%. So we'll need to cut 2 of these, and I'm going to be using Decoville Light. You can use fusible fleece if you want to. If that's all you have is fusible fleece, it'll work. It just won't be like super duper stiff, but it's also vinyl and it's not the biggest bag in the entire world. So if you have fusible fleece, that will work, or fusible foam, that would work too. I would not recommend Decoville Heavy for this because of how small this bag is. If you use Decoville Heavy in it, it's just going to make turning it out a pain in the keister. So to save yourself, save your hands, save the frustration, I've done it. I've kicked myself afterwards. So avoid Decoville Heavy. So Decoville Light, fusible fleece, fusible foam, it all works. And if you only have foam, you can do foam. I wouldn't do foam in your seam allowance though, because when you're doing it, it's going to be a lot of layers, because you're going to have this, you're going to have like the headdress piece, and it's going to be a lot of layers. So just domestic users, please be very mindful of this bag because of how many layers it does have. if you are unsure, do this piece, like these pieces. If you have a blue, do them in cotton woven just to help reduce the amount of bulk that is going to go on against your machine. But when it comes to like the headdress piece and then attaching it onto the front, and then when you attach the front and your gusset, you'll have this, the 2 layers. So there's 3, 4. So you'll have 4 layers of vinyl for that. And then you'll also have the water resistant canvas too. So it does make a lot of layers, but it's no different than when you sew over this, when you sew over this for your bags as well. So it's just a lot more of it on the front. These are just smaller pieces on the back side. But anyway, so interfacing, webbing, all this. I'm going to cut everything out that I need. Yeah, and we'll get going. And then for your main, like the stabilizer pieces, I'm going to be using Decoville Light. I'm like, where did I do it? There it is. I constantly keep misplacing stuff. So I'm going to cut 2 of these pieces out, but you guys don't really need to see me cut those out. I'll cut those out in a second. But for these pieces, so for your zipper gusset, just double checking length. If you did like a 11.5 inches wide by, let me double check. Yeah, so 11.5 inches long by 1.5 inches wide this way. So if you cut your stabilizer 11.5 this way, 1.5 this way, and then for your main gusset piece, yep. Okay, so you can go 18 or maybe like 17 3/4, so just a little under 18. So 18 this way or a little under. And then you could do, yeah, 2.5 inches wide this way. So again, just under 18 or 18 inches long, 2.5 inches wide. So you get those cut, and then this using your stabilizer pattern piece, if you make sure to print it at 120%. And again, there'll be a video linked in the description for that. So you cut all those pieces, make sure to press your lining pieces. So get all that ready, and I will meet you guys at the sewing machine. I have all of my pieces all interfaced, so I got my Decoville Light on my zipper panel, or zipper gusset. I have it on my gusset. This is gonna look so awesome. I have it on my front, my back, and then those are the only pieces that I actually have the Decoville Light on. And everything else, I just pressed out all of any of the creases that were going. And before I forget, I'm just going to do this now, even though I could wait and do it, but I'll just do it now. So, like I said, sometimes the printer stuff can come a little bit bigger, and bigger is good. It's when things start to become smaller that we run into an issue. So just putting that clip on there. And so that is how much excess I have from the lining gusset to the exterior gusset. And you definitely want to make sure that your gusset pieces are the same. That one's done. And if they end up being wider, the lining pieces are wider this way, that's totally fine, because then we can trim those off once we get the gusset all sewn together. And I'm not going to worry about trimming off the excess on the main pieces to the lining pieces, because once I baste my exterior and my lining pieces together, then I can see the excess, and then I can just trim it off at that point. But I am going to start with this because I have my white thread in already. So we're going to start here, because then I'll switch over to blue. No, I will stay white and do the straps. Yes, and then I'll switch over to blue. So I got some double-sided stick tape. And just go around adding it in. You only need to add it onto one side. Once you get your double-sided stick pieces on, go ahead and peel up the paper that's on the back of them. Then grab your other piece, and we're going to line this up to the best of our abilities. I'm just going to start working on one side, trying to line them up. If they're slightly off, that's fine, because then we sew it together, and then, or we can adjust it with a double-sided stick tape. We can pick stuff up and move it around, which is the nice part. But even after we stitch it together, we'll go around it and trim off any of the pieces that are like, holy smokes, this really hangs over, or anything like that. So that wasn't too terrible. Just give it a nice little finger press, make sure everything kind of sticks together. Throw a couple clips on there just to kind of help it. Okay. Yeah, it should line up fairly decently. All right. And then because this is the part that's going to be in our seam allowance for the bag itself, and this is the part that's going to stick out of the bag, I want to make sure when I start basting this on, or sewing this on, because we don't really want to baste it, because once we get out here, you're going to see it. I want to start on the inside, anywhere in here, because that's going to get hidden. So even if our stitching, when we come back together, doesn't line up, it's not the prettiest, it's not a big deal, because it's going to be hidden. This outside edge here, that's where we want to make sure and take our time and go slowly around the curves, and because that's going to be seen. So we want to make sure to do good on that area. Picking a spot, and then all you got to do is go around the whole thing at 1/8 of an inch. Helpful little hints here. Make sure when you stop and you're doing any adjustments, needle down. When you lift your foot, when you're going to turn and pivot, so that way, because if you leave your foot down, your fabric can shift. And then big thing, keep your foot off of your pedal while you're doing any adjustments, because if you don't realize it, you could accidentally press down on it and sew it, and so then we can get some wonkiness. But so just a little tip. All right, so on mine, I went a little wide right here, so I'm fingers crossed that doesn't show up when I go to put it on. And I went off the edge right here. So as you can see, I went off the edge. So I'm actually going to go try to sew around that corner just to kind of like, because it looks off a little bit, and then you can see where I went a little wide right here. So I'm going to try to fix that. Hopefully. Okay, I got the headpiece all fixed up, ready to go. So let's grab our front. All right, so this is going to be where it's going to be a little bit tricky. And oh my gosh, I don't even know how I'm going to do this, because we need, we're going to have to get a little creative here. All right, so I'm just folding my little top piece in half, making a little center notch. Find the center notch of my top. Okay, so we want to make sure that the headband piece is the one facing forward when we're all done. So it's gonna have, so that will be our right side, and this is the wrong side. So we're gonna put right side of this to the right side of our front. And I'm matching up the tops right now. And oh my gosh, pretty much, let's just kind of, we're gonna have to kind of play this one by ear. I don't know how this is going to work. All right. I'm just going to start in the middle because it's trying to figure out if I can start on the one side and go around is not necessarily going to work completely. So I'm having, my notches are still lined up. I'm going to start this at 1/8 of an inch. So I back stitch in the middle just to make sure I'm holding it. And so what we need to do is then work this piece around as we're sewing. And that's where you wouldn't really be able to clip this per se. So we're going to just keep the edges. So this is going to be the harder side to do. So I'm going to flip it over and go back the other direction, but I'm still going to need to do the same thing that I did to the other side. So this is where it's going to be a little bit tricky. So hopefully I can get this, and if it works, yay. If it doesn't, then, well, I'll figure out what not to do for you guys. Okay, so it was a little awkward, but not the end of the world. So yeah, there's I went a little wide. So hopefully I probably trim that now. Okay, so I removed those threads now, so that way I'm not having to hassle with it just in case that it doesn't completely work out. But once we get this all turned off, this is gonna look so freaking cool. Oh, I'm excited for this. Okay, so I'm gonna set that piece aside. Oh, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? Oh, let's do the pockets. Because this is, do I want to do blue? No, let's do the strap. For my strap, I like to go a little bit on the longer side. So I like to do like 1.5 yards-ish. Okay, once you got your webbing cut, go ahead and heat seal your ends. And so the way that I do this is a little bit different than what the instructions have. So I want to start with my rectangle. Yes. Yes, yes. Trying to remember how to do this. And then, so I have my rectangle piece on. I have my slide adjuster. I'm going to then go up one side of the bar. So the bar is in the middle. I'm going to go up and over that bar. And so depending on if you want to have it sewn, like if you want to do like a big box with an X, then you need to make this a little bit longer. I personally just do a line back and forth. And just want to make sure that I have this going in the right direction. So that way, that way, that way. Yep, because I want to make sure that my webbing, the Rebels, is facing the correct way. Okay, so grab that. Okay, so once I have the little piece sewn over my little slide adjuster, some slide adjusters, like the middle bar is like fixed, so then it doesn't actually, like this bar doesn't slide, but we're okay. So that's what the Rebels, the webbing looks like going that way, and then it goes down to my rectangle. There it is. And now I'm going to slide this going up. So on one side of my middle piece, and then I'm going to go pull some slack, and then I'm going to go, so I have my bar squished down to the one side, and I'm going to go through that, and then that's what it will look like. So then I have the bar in the middle. So that's what it should look like. And then this, there you go. And so as it sits on the body, this will go down towards like the bottom of the bag, and this will go up towards the top. So then the symbols are all facing the correct direction. So normally in the instructions, it has like you put glue on it and then you hold this around and then you would rivet, and then your webbing would go inside of this, and then this would be here. And then it would get sewn around, and then you'd put rivets, and then that would go through the webbing. But because there's this really pretty detail, I don't want to put rivets through that. So to make sure that my webbing is going to be the one holding like the brunt of like the pole and the weight of the strap and the backpack itself. So I like to it doesn't really matter which way this gets added to the swivel clasp, but just go around it, fold it over, and then I sew this down on itself. And it really doesn't matter how you sew this one, as long as however you sew it, it will get covered up by the little detail. So this part that's where this is different than what the actual instructions have. So if I were to pull on this, like that's going to be really sturdy. So then when I add this piece, and if I'm like getting tugged and there's a lot of weight, it's not putting the stress onto this decorative piece because it's only going to be sewn around and it's not going to have the rivets on it. Then this will still look nice and pretty. And now at this point, it's because I have that side facing up. So this will be the side that I see. So do I want the I'm not a Jedi on there, or do I want the rebel symbol? Decisions. I think on this one, I'm going to do the rebel symbol. So then you push it through, and then you get it, and then everything, you'll start to line it up. You want your webbing in between the two edge corners right there. And then you want to make sure that all of your sides are all lined up. Everything looks good. And I'm just going to throw a clip on there. And then I can't get to sew across here because I also don't want to sew through the little pretty detail either. So I just start from this corner. I go down, over, up, until I end at my corners. And then if you wanted to, once this is all done, you can edge coat this if you want. I personally do not tend to edge coat. Oh, and I got a little ahead of myself. This right here where I sewed this down, if you want to, that's where this piece comes in too. You would add this. Let me grab a other end of webbing. So if this was the raw end, I would add this on first. Then I would sew that on right there, trim off my edges. Then I would put it through my little slide adjuster, and then it would get sewn on right here. So then this little edge piece, you can sew through this if you want, or in front of it. But this, if you sewed it here, this would be loose, and you could sew it through again. It's your preference. Like, you don't have to use these little tab pieces if you don't want to. It's not a big deal. So since I clearly forgot to put that on or even do it, I'm just gonna not use them. And then, so I'm just double checking everything is still lined up and looks good. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew around the edge. I'm just gonna do that at 1/8 of an inch. And I back stitch at the beginning and the end. And then once you get it all finished, if you want to, if your edges aren't quite the same, so like right here, this back part right here is a little bit longer, so you could just go around and trim everything up to keep it all even. If you don't want to, it's not a big deal. Okay. All right, so this is one part of the strap. So to do the lower half of the strap, I need a secondary piece of webbing. Okay, so I have a secondary piece of webbing. I cut mine to 8 inches. It's just a matter of personal preference on that one. Or you can, I believe the instructions gives you a slightly different length, but I've slid it through the rectangle, and then I'm going to go slide it through. Oh, technically I don't need to put it through that first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it around my swivel clasp first, sew that part down. Once I have that piece, so that part sewn down, now I'll have it go through the rectangle. And then I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to meet it up with the other end of the webbing. And then I'm going to sew that down. So again, I like to do it this way because then if I were to pull on the strap, I put a lot of weight into it or anything like that, my webbing is going to be the one to hold all the weight and the stress of it. It's not going to be sitting in this little detail thing. Then I go ahead and I'm going to add this last part through. And then just like we did with the other side, we're going to make sure to have, this side now has 2 pieces of webbing, but you want to make sure that you are lined up between the 2 corners and that your edges are as lined up as the best you can. And if it's not perfect, it's okay, because then we can just trim. And then we're going to sew around, starting on one end, back stitching at that end, at the beginning and the end. And so I'll start here and end here. And again, like we did on the other one, we're just going to trim up any excess. And that completes our crossbody, or our rectangular Mav Pack strap. If I can get it to go the right direction. There we go. So this piece will be at the top, and then all my symbols are going the correct direction. And as I come down, oh, and this side it has the symbol as well. I thought I was doing the I am a Jedi. Oh well, it's all good. All right, and with the strap completed, you can go ahead and set that aside. And I'm gonna switch out my, wait, do I want to? Because that's the zipper. Yeah, I'm gonna stay with white for right now because I'm not gonna have it be as contrasting just yet. Okay, so I have my zipper gusset right in front of me. I'm going to take my zipper tape. I'm gonna make it just a little bit longer than the actual zipper gusset. If you want to follow what well, technically the instructions are for the 100% size, because this is the 200, or sorry, not 200. This is 120%. You'll need to measure it based off of your zipper gusset, because the instructions will be for a smaller size. And then go ahead and heat seal your ends. And the reason I like to have my zipper tape a little bit longer than the actual edges is just because when you go to birth the bag, the stress of turning it and pulling it, you can accidentally pull your zipper teeth out, which I've done. So that's why I like to go a little bit longer. So that way I have a little more wiggle room. All right, now the decision. Do I want to have where I look at the front of the bag and I can see Ahsoka? Or, so that would be like this. Or do I want it to be where if I look at the back of the bag like I'm going to get into it, do I want to see Ahsoka? Ooh, decisions. Oh, I don't know. I think I'm going to go with this one. Yeah, I think I'm going to go this way. Okay. I have a second one of these to make up. So I think on that one, I'll do it the other way. So then at the end, you guys can see both options. And then you guys can decide what you like. All right, so I'm clipping so I want to line up the edge of my zipper tape. So I put the right side of my zipper tape to the right side of my zipper gusset. And I lined up the edge. My zipper tape goes past it. So you just kind of center it. And then you're going to baste this on at 1/8 of an inch. And then we want to take the right side of our lining and we're going to put that face down. So depending on, it's not as like super critical to have this be however you want it. But let's just say if I to put it down like this, when I flip it over, the inside of the bag, yeah, it'll look like that. And also, yeah, I'm going to do it that way. All right. Anyway, that part's really, yeah. Okay, so we're going to grab our lining piece and we're going to put it face down. And it really doesn't matter which direction. You could put it down this way or you could put it down where like that. That part doesn't matter as long as when you put the gusset piece, when we attach the gusset and the gusset lining, we'll just make sure that whichever way you put your lining piece on this part down, the bottom gusset for the lining will match this piece. So that's the part that matters the most. And so we are lining up our top edge here, but we're also lining up our ends here as well. And then so clip those in place. And it's a tiny bit longer and I'll trim that off once I get this sewn on. And we're going to sew this on at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, and then with these are currently right sides together, we're going to pull them apart and we're going to then put wrong sides together. I'm lining up my edges of my lining and my exterior, and then I'm pinching the seam allowance that we just sewn, and I am kind of pulling them apart, but I don't want to pull too hard on my zipper because I don't want to cause my zipper to go wavy. So it's just a little bit of a pull, not too terribly much. Just trying to get us lay flat, and then if you have a seam roller, you can grab that and that can help you to roll those out. Oh, might help if I'm lining up from the correct side because those sides match up. It's this side that's off. All right, so lining up my ends, and I'm just going to finger press that. And then at the end I will trim that off. Get a good finger press, and then I'm just going to top stitch this at 1/8 of an inch. And then I'm going to just trim off this little bit of excess. Not that it really makes that tremendous of a big deal, but it'll just make it easier to line up the gusset pieces. All right, important thing is to add our zipper pull. Oh, I didn't notice it. Oh, that's cute. So I thought it was just like rainbow on the one side, but the middle of this, it's like a blue, shiny blue, and then it's got the word rebel in it. Oh, that's cute. I didn't notice that before. Okay, moving on. If you want your zipper to, if you're doing a dual zipper pulls, it really doesn't matter because you're going to put one on each side. But if you're only doing a single pull, you want to, depending on how you want it to open, if you want it to open from left to right, you put it in on the right. If you want it to open from right to left, you put it in on the left. So I want mine to go from left to right. And then take a note of the height of your zipper teeth. And then we're going to pull the teeth apart. Grab a hold. If you have a zipper jig, go ahead and use it. And then I grab a hold of my zipper. I put one side in just a little bit, not just enough to kind of keep it there. And then bend the zipper teeth over to get the other side. And then I look in. Oop, that side fell out. I look in from the back and I'm holding my zipper teeth and then I'm holding my zipper pull here. And so I'm trying to get everything to line up. Sometimes easier said than done. And then as I'm pushing down on my zipper pull, I'm holding my teeth there. And then as long as when you put your zipper pull on, if your teeth look the same as what they did before you pull them apart, you will have a very pretty looking zipper pull and you won't have bulges going to specifically to one side or the other. If one side is higher than the other, you'll have a weird bulge in your zipper tape and then it just won't look quite right. But if you have dual zipper pulls, it's not as noticeable when that happens. All right, so I got my zipper on. All right, now we can grab our gussets. So I want to make sure that my words are all going to be going the same direction. So I have Ahsoka so it's upside down to me currently. So then I want to make sure when I sew on the bottom gusset, my words are upside down to me currently. Because it wouldn't be quite right if this was going upside down and then this was right side up. So you want to make sure they're going the same direction. And then it's okay. So now those are. And then we're going to line up our edges here. And we're going to kind of center it on our zipper gusset because our bottom gusset is a tiny bit wider, which is totally fine. So we're just going to clip that down. And then as I'm sewing, because my zipper tape is a little bit longer, I like to backstitch over my zipper right here to be able to kind of give that extra little bit of a hold to make sure my zipper teeth don't come out. And you're going to baste this together at 1/8 of an inch. And then we're going to grab our zipper or gusset lining piece. And so we want to make sure that our words are going the same direction. So they are facing the same. So I'm going to put that right side together, lining pieces right side together. And then I'm going to line up my end pieces and then also my side pieces with my gusset. Or my exterior gusset piece. So making sure everything is lined up. Okay. And then you're going to sew that together at 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then so the same things that we did to this side, we're going to do the exact same things to the other side. Once you get your pieces all finished, I'm going to push them the wrong sides together and I pinch at that seam. And I like to put a little clip there just to kind of help hold it. Trim this whole thing out. Things kind of get a little twisted sometimes. All right. Pinch. And then I like to clip my lining and my exterior together, so that way when I go around to baste them together, it just makes life a little bit easier. And then basting the two pieces together, when you go to do the binding, it just makes that process so much easier. And then I'm going to lengthen my stitch, because I'm just basting this together. On the side that has my zipper, I just need to go from one side of my gusset to the other side. I don't need to sew across the actual zipper. And then the other side, I will do a full 360 on that one. And then you're just basting this on at 1/8 of an inch. And then once it's all basted together, because sometimes the gusset lining can be a little bit wider than your actual gusset, if you double check that nothing is like super crazy wide, and then if you do find it, then you can trim it off. And then these little, like the little bump out, it's not quite completely even. I just kind of trim that side down to kind of taper it into each other, so that way there's not like a drastic like, ooh, that's a big difference, because that'll make a difference when you go to add your binding, because it'll push when you go to do the binding right there. If you're cruising along here and then you get a high spot, then it pushes you outward, and then it actually will change what the depth of what you're sewing for your seam allowance is right there where it's a high spot. So I just go around and I trim, trying to even it up the best I can, not to make it like super drastic, I guess. And then for our gusset, we can go ahead and then I like to then line those up. I put a clip on it and then find my center for the gusset. And then for the top. And then instead of making a snip on my zipper tape, because I don't want it to potentially like fray down the road, I just take a marking pin and just mark within what will be the seam allowance, my center. So a little mark, just enough that I can tell. All right, and at this point we can set our gusset aside. That is fully assembled. And now I'm gonna grab my pockets. So I'm not going to do a zipper pocket on this. If you are curious about doing a zipper pocket, check out one of my other Pimp My Bag series with the Mav Packs. If you did check like the Mike and Sully one, I do a zipper pocket on Sully. In any of the other previous Mav Packs, except for the light up ones, like the Forbidden Forest one is just a slip pocket. Yeah, if you check some of the other ones, there'll be zipper pockets in those ones and you can follow along with those. And our zipper pocket, the piece itself is almost as big as our lining here. Let me see if I can zoom out. Okay, now you can make sure to see everything that I'm working on. And I don't necessarily need this to be as wide. So I want to make sure I can go shorter, and I can only go a little bit narrower. So I probably can get away with like, yeah, I'd probably still do a 1/2 inch. I'll probably just do a 1/2 inch seam allowance around the whole thing to make it easy. And then so that way it keeps it out of my seam allowances on my side, and then I don't need it to be such a deep pocket anyway. You're going to grab your slip pocket pieces and I'm going to put them right sides together. And then if you want to, you can clip. There we go. So clip them together, and then you're going to leave an opening on one side and then back stitch. Oops. Gotta make my stitch length smaller. All right, and then you're going to go around this whole thing at a 1/2 inch, but make sure that you leave a gap so that way you can turn your pocket right side out. And then go grab your scissors. You're going to trim your corners. And then you're going to trim along your sides. You want to leave like at minimum an 1/8 inch, quarters a good length. When you get to the side that has your opening, you're going to trim to where you're opening, just before your opening, and then you're going to cut outward. And then the other side, you'll cut down and then go over. The reason I do it like this is because when I turn this right side out, I have these pieces are long, so I have a little bit more wiggle room to be able to turn and tuck those down for when I do my top stitching for the slip pocket. And then so this right here, you're going to do that exact same thing to your second one. Okay, turn your pocket out. You're just going to go from the opening. And I just reach inside and I go to a corner. I have my thumb in that corner, and then I use my other finger to kind of help push that corner out. So it's a good starting point. And then just work and turn it all the way out. So we got it mostly out, and then if you have a turning tool, I just use a mechanical pencil. You go into the opening and you just poke out the corners and kind of roll the seams a little bit too. And that way you get a nice looking corner. You got all your corners, and then just roll the seams to get them to want to lay flat. And if you wanted to, you can take it over to your iron and press this. Help get out any wrinkles. And then the nice thing about having these pieces be long, because if they were short and you try to tuck them down, sometimes they want to come back out, or they're just a little bit more difficult to want to get them to lay flat in there. But with them being a little bit longer, they want to stay in place a little better. At least that I've noticed. All right, once you got that done, go ahead and top stitch your pocket, and you're going to do that to both of your pocket pieces. And so this turning process, you'll do it to your second one as well if you're doing 2 slip pockets. And you just top stitch this at 1/8 of an inch. So that's what our pockets will look like. Okay, once you got your pockets all set up, let's go ahead and find our center notches of our lining. And while I'm doing the centers, I'm just going to go ahead and find the center of the back piece as well. For the slip pocket, because it's the same on both sides, it really doesn't matter what you put where. And so I'm just kind of eyeballing this. Let's grab my ruler. Let's see where we're at. I like the looks of that. So my pocket is 1.25 inches up from the bottom on my lining. I'm just gonna bring that over, and I'm gonna sew down the 3 sides. So the part the top that is top stitched, we're not gonna sew across that. So we're just gonna start on one corner, go down across the bottom and back up and end on this side. And you'll do that exact same thing to your second pocket as well. Okay, and then if you have a label for your business, depending on where you want to put it, if you want to put it on the outside of your bag, top or bottom, or I normally like to I'll put it on the inside of my bag. I think that will be a good spot. Okay, now that we've got the pockets done, and our lining, or my lining, most of the lining should be a little bit bigger, and that's okay. You're just going to try to line up centered, so I got a little bit of overhang from the lining to the exterior on this one, but I got my center notches lined up. Little adjustment there. Okay, and then I'm going to increase my stitch length, and I'm just going to go around, and I'm having my exterior facing up, because then I can't tell if I do it from the lining side up. The lining is a little bit bigger, so I'll potentially miss catching my exterior, so I want to make sure that I'm doing it with my exterior side up. And then just go all the way around, basting your lining and your exterior together. Once you got it all basted together, you're going to take your scissors and you're going to trim off all the excess lining all the way around. Go ahead and grab your front piece, and then we're going to line up. This will be a little bit tricky, but it'll be okay. So we're going to line up our top notch and our bottom. So I'm going to push more of this excess to the top. Okay, so this is a little tricky. So if you're probably waiting to put these on, the head piece on, until after the lining's basted on, is probably a good idea, just so that way you can get everything, the lining and the front put on properly, and then you can come in and then add this. So that probably would be a better option, but it's still doable to do it like this. And just like we did on the back exterior, we're going to go from the front side, and we're going to baste the lining to the exterior at 1/8 inch. And so another thing you can do to help it want to lay flat after we do the binding, let me zoom back out so I can actually get it. Put some snips into the seam allowance. This will help kind of give little relief cuts along this edge for that curve. So this will really help with the ear wanting to lay out, or yeah, like lay open and out all the way without wanting to come back in. Okay, once you got it basted on, which again, I would recommend to add this piece on after you get the lining basted on. And so just go around now. You can trim off your excess of your lining. All right, once you got all of the excess or your excess lining trimmed off, go ahead and set this aside. I got one more, nope. Well, shoot, because I wanted to, I can do that in blue. I wanted to do that in white, but I need to do this in blue. So I'm going to swap over to my blue thread, and then we'll continue on. For our day-ring tabs, we're going to find our center line, so it's just going to be 1 inch. If you wanted to, you could grab a piece of double-sided stick tape and put it right down there in the middle, and then fold your sides in to meet. That will help hold it in place. I'm just going to use my fingers to help hold it in place. You'll sew down at 1/8 of an inch, go down the one side, over, and then back up the other side. Okay, after you got it all sewn together, you're going to fold it in half and then cut it. One of the pieces is going to go in between these two pieces. I'm going to be using a rectangle piece. You can use a D-ring or a rectangle. Did I call this a rectangle? I'm using a triangle piece. Catch myself there. You can use D-ring, triangle, rectangle. It doesn't matter. Whatever you have. You can use a circle if you wanted to too. And then we're going to place it in the middle. If you wanted to fold this in half and truly find the center, you totally can do that. I am eyeballing it, and I want to have a 1/2 inch of tail sticking over the end. And then grab your other piece, and you're going to sandwich your tab in between Add a couple clips to help hold everything, and you're going to sew around this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you have a domestic machine and your machine doesn't really like a bunch of layers, then maybe instead of using the vinyl that comes with this, swapping it out to maybe a blue cotton woven, just to kind of decrease the bulk, will help make your machine maybe a little bit happier. Okay, once I got it sewn all the way around, just to be able to help, because I'm going to be turning this out, it's all the vinyl pieces. I just want to make sure that I'm going to add another piece. I'm going to stitch right across here, 1/8 of an inch away from my previous stitch line, just to be able to kind of help relieve the tension that when you turn it out and you roll it, you don't see the stitching coming through. This part is completely optional. Then we're going to trim off our little corners. I'm not going to be trimming off this excess. And we're going to rotate, or not really rotate, but we're going to birth this little thing out. And if you have a turning tool, you can poke out your corners. And so technically I could have sewn all the way around again, like I did up here at the top, because as you can see, when I turn it, you can see my blue stitching right there. So, and then up here where the blue is, you don't really notice it as much. Well, one blue thread, which is nice, but it kind of helped hold it in place there, so it didn't have as much like the tension. And now we're going to go around and we're going to top stitch this at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Once you got it top stitched all the way around, you're just going to trim off those little bottom triangle pieces. And grab your back piece. And then we're just going to I'm just going to make a little crease so I know my center. There we go. And then I'm going to line it up with my top center notch. And I'm going to base that on at 1/8 of an inch. So you would do the same thing if you're using a D-ring, triangle, rectangle, your preference, a circle. You would add this in between your triangular piece, which was the square that we cut in half at the beginning. And it will, when you turn it out right, it'll be on whatever side you choose. Your preference on that one could be on either side. If you are doing this on a domestic and your machine has trouble with a bunch of layers, swap that out for cotton woven. It'll just make this part a lot easier. So I'm going to throw a little clip on there just to help hold it in place, and then I sew around this corner here at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. On this one, I'm actually going to sew around it one more time. So I'm going to go the other direction. See if I can get a little bit closer. So on this one, you can see that I did a second stitch, so that's going to hopefully help with like when I turn it out, so I don't see like the stitching pulled. I'm going to trim my corner. I'm going to trim this off a little bit. And then we're going to turn this all the way out. And with this, like matching your color threads to something like this will definitely help with not being able to them to be as noticeable as well. So bonus on of the blue threads. Okay, that's a nice little tight corner. All right, and then I just don't want to have, so when I sew this piece on here, I don't want to necessarily catch this excess into my seam allowance when I go to sew my binding on. So I'm actually going to trim off this excess. Make sure I'm not cutting Anything I don't need to. So now when I sew across for my binding, I'm not going to catch this piece. So I'm not having all that extra layers. And then we're going to top stitch this all the way around at 1/8 of an inch. And then when you're finished, then trim off those little triangle pieces. And now you get to decide which side you want your triangle or your attachment to be. So you can either go with that side or this side. So your personal preference, but just make sure that it's facing to the inside of the bag. And you, whatever side you decide to do it on, just make sure, be cautious of how far down you go. If you get too far down in there, it's going to be part of your corner when you're doing it. So it's, especially if you're doing a domestic machine, you want to reduce the amount of bulk, especially going through the corners, because corners can be a little tricky. So I'm going to make sure that I'm out of my corner. Okay, so I like that. And if you feel like that pushes it too high up for you, another option, instead of using this triangle piece, you could put the little D-ring tab directly onto the side of it here. So then see how much it drops the connection here. So it gives it a little bit more space in between these pieces. And then you don't have this big piece that you're working with. And then you can sit it a little bit lower if you put the tab part directly onto the back. But I didn't do that, so I got to use the big piece. Oh, there's one clip. Okay, now, we're getting to the final portion. All right, and I want to start with the front because the front is what you're going to see the most of. And then with the binding, it gives you the best maneuverability. So I'm going to turn my gusset to where I'm going to zoom out so you can see everything. I have my lining fabric of my gusset turned out. I'm going to find my top mark. So I got my little mark there on my zipper tape. I'm going to line it up with my top notch. This is going to be interesting. Well, that's for sure. And then line up your bottom notch of your gusset with your exterior notch. Okay, here comes fun. Total sarcasm, but it's gonna look so good when this is all done. Like I'm excited for this. And then just go around and you're going to be lining up your gusset with your exterior. If you're having trouble getting your curves lined up, what you can do is take some scissors, and then I wouldn't go don't make super deep cuts. You just want to go just about to your basting, and you're just making little relief cuts in your curves, and you're going to do this both on your exterior piece and on your gusset piece. And this will just help relax the material to be able to fit those curves just a little bit better. All right, I got it all clipped in place. With this, it's just a matter of just taking your time, and especially in the corners, as I'm coming up to it, I will try my best to explain as we're going. Let me zoom it back in for you guys. And fair warning, this is 4 layers of vinyl and 2 layers of waterproof canvas or water resistant canvas. So there are a lot of layers, especially right where the headpiece starts. So just outside of the corners and all the way up, that's a lot of layers. So take your time. And we're just going to be going around at 1/8 of an inch all the way around. All right, As I'm coming up to my corner, I have most of my hand on the inside of the bag. I have my thumb on the outside, and that's going to help me in rotating my bag over. The biggest thing is underneath your foot, whatever's underneath of it, you want it to be flat. You want it to be as flat as you possibly can. That will help reduce the amount of puckers that you could potentially get. So then just take your time as you're coming up to the corners. I am rotating my bag. I am making sure that everything is flat. All right, the basting, I'm gonna zoom out, is all finished. And so I can definitely see I missed this corner. That corner looks like I did good. All right, I'm gonna do like a little pre-turn. I just wanna make sure that everything is gonna my corners look good, everything does look good. A little bit easier to kind of fix things now than later. Okay, those look good. Oh, this headpiece is gonna look so good. All right, I do have to go back in and fix that corner, but aside from that one, everything else looks pretty darn good. All right, now comes the binding portion. Okay, so all you want to do is make sure before I actually start the binding, you want to double check that you don't have any giant sticking out. So like right here, my gusset piece sticks out quite a bit. So I want to actually trim that part down. Because if you have something that sticks out, it can mess up your binding. So I have a little bit right here, but if it was bigger, as I'm going around and I'm sewing at my 1/4" seam allowance, if I have to go pushed out, now my 1/4" seam allowance, what I'm thinking is a 1/4" seam allowance, is actually going to be closer to an 1/8, and I'm not going to be able to sew right here as far into it as I'm supposed to. So you just want to double check that you don't have anything that's going to push you out, making sure your binding is going to look good. And then this is the side that I'm going to be sewing from, so I can't see what's going to be back here. So all of my excess on my binding, I want to push to the back, so that way I'm making sure that I'm going to be catching that, because it's always a bummer after you're all done and you're like, oh cool, I got it, and then you look at the other side and you missed like chunks. So happens to me all the time. And then when you get to a corner, I'm going to zoom in for you guys a little bit. So when I get to a corner, I'm going to fold over the one side and hold that there. And then I just kind of push my material as far over as I can and then push it back, and I kind of make like a little mini mitered corner. So if you're familiar with quilting. So it's just to kind of like to overlap the material so that way it lays flat. Once you turn or birth your bag out, you're not really going to notice those corners as well. And especially if you're using a coordinating thread color, so I'm using blue binding and I'm using blue thread, it's really not going to be that noticeable once you turn your bag right side out. You want to make sure, like, as you're clipping it around, you want to try to flatten out the area that you're working on for the little headdress piece, the top front, to help not have it pucker or get a little weird. And that's the same thing you'll do as you're going around and you're sewing that. Your hand will be on the inside and moving it around, trying to get it to get flat in that spot. And then I just overlap my binding. Ooh, I overlapped a lot. Don't need that quite that much overlap. For our binding, we're gonna sew this on at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, here we go. And as you're getting higher up into like the little headpiece thing, you really want to make sure you're checking the inside. So back in here with where my hand is, that everything as you're coming up to it is laying flat. That's going to help reduce puckers. That's going to help get everything to line up and look pretty. Okay, binding's all done for the front side. Ooh, my machine didn't quite like some of it, but that's okay. I'll just kind of trim that and melt it. So won't be super noticeable once I turn it out anyway. And then something else that I like to do is I like to go around and I'll trim up the excess of my my binding. So that way it's not just hanging out. We are halfway done. Yay! All right, now we can grab our back piece and we'll just do the exact same thing that we did at the front. We'll line up our top notches, our bottom notches, and then clip everything together. So I got the back part all clipped in, and then I remembered I have these cute little woven labels. So I'm like, oh, I need to add my little woven label. I think that'd be really cute. I never remember to add these. So this is me actually remembering. Shocker! So I'm actually going to have it be on the outside of the bag. I have yet to ever put one on the outside. I'm curious to see how this will look out. So I'm doing it on the opposite side of, so my strap connector anchor is over here on this side. So I'm doing it on the opposite side. Making sure to put my clips back. And then something to be able to really help you when working on sewing the bag, open your zipper all the way. This will help be able to maneuver. And I'm just going to double check that my label is flat, and it is. All right, yeah, so then having your zipper open as you're going around, especially in the curves, you can reach your hand inside to make sure everything's laying flat. It just makes it a little bit more accessible and easier to work with. Okay, now to find a spot to start at. I have all these clips at the top. Yeah, let's see if I can make room over here. Okay, I think I can get in over there. Okay, yep, I'll get in over here. And then you're just gonna, just like you did on the front, you're gonna sew around at 1/8 of an inch. The basting is now done. I'm just going to kind of like do an outside check, make sure I got everything. If you want to stick your hand on the inside and you can kind of feel around, I feel like there might be an issue there. Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, there might be an issue. Yeah, I might have a pucker right here. Hopefully when I do the binding, it won't be there because I'll have a bigger seam allowance. All right, now to grab the binding. And we're gonna do the binding the exact same way that we did on the front. Clip it all together and make sure if you have any high areas that you trim those off. Like, so I got that little area. So trim any high areas, add your binding, and we'll get going on our last step. Once you have all of your clips on, you're gonna go ahead and stitch around this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, once you're finished adding your binding on, you go ahead and trim up all of the excess. Okay, binding is all done. Now we're at the final part. Woo. All right, once you get it all turned out, go ahead and go around and roll those seams. Ooh, this is looking good. I think I like having it be Ahsoka this way, then, because if it was facing this way, then you wouldn't really see it as much. I like having that on the outside of the bag. That's cute. I really like that. And then we got our zipper pull. I am no Jedi. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna move the camera for you guys. Oh my gosh, this looks so cool. I love it. I love it. I'm wondering if, because I don't have any thread this color to be able to match it, so it's something that you could do that I did on like the Mike and Sully bags to help this want to stand up a little better. What you could do, it'd probably be a lot of a pain in the butt, but you could always try to go in and then smush your binding piece and this top piece right here and top stitch around in this opening in this top piece and just go like right on that edge right there. That would help it to stand up. Oh, something that you could also do that I didn't think about is you could add some Peltex into this, like especially like right in here. I think once it's like, because this is kind of all squishy because of just being squished from assembling of the bag, but I do think adding some Peltex in it would help it want to stand up a little bit better. And then I think maybe just having it lay flat for a little while. Well, and I think it's just going to naturally have that right there. I think just letting it chill out flat for a while will help that as well. But aside from that, oh, like just even the back just looks so cool. Like even just having that as your front would be so awesome. Like that's super cool. Like it still looks freaking awesome as is. Like even with a little bit of a, like that little bit of a crease right there, a little bit of a bend. Or even if we like bring that forward and then push the ears backward, or I guess, would that be her ears? I don't know. Hair, ears, I don't know. Oh, that looks so cool. Oh my gosh, it looks so awesome. Okay. All right, I have a couple mistakes. So the corner on the back that I thought was going to have an issue, it did have a little issue. It just kind of, but it's like, it's super minute and tiny. It's not super noticeable, but still, like, we're our own worst critics. Like, that's just the name of the game. But, I love it. It is so cool. So cool. Cool. Well, thank you guys for watching this tutorial of the Ahsoka bag. It is part of the Pimp My Bag series. This is a Mav cut and sew. Make sure that you have to submit your Mav pattern proof of purchase before you can actually purchase this cut and sew. And again, the Mav Pack is from Lynn's Handmade. This is 120%. The normal size, of course, being the 100%. And we did the binding method on this. Oh my gosh, it is so cool. I can't get over how cool this looks. Oh wait, where's my strap? I gotta show my strap too. All of it together is just awesome. Oh, it's so cool. Well, thank you guys for watching this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it and have a great rest of your day. Bye.